The Unreal Engine Cheat Manager is a very useful tool for debugging and prototyping, especially when you add your own functionality to it. It is already enabled and functioning in your project by default, and has a number of useful built-in functions, and I'm here listing some of the functions I found to be the most beneficial to know about. Guard to make you completely undamageable. Then there is Teleport that will move your player's pawn to wherever your camera is looking. In this top-down example, that's not very useful, but for other modes it's more helpful. Then there's Ghost and Fly that will let you walk through walls or fly into the air, respectively. And then you use the walk command to go back to normal. There is Summon to spawn any actor by its class name. For example, I can spawn my Trace Visualizer plugin when I find myself confused about why a trace isn't working. Make sure you append _C at the end for blueprint classes. And it also won't load your asset into memory, so you may find it only works if you have the blueprint opened or otherwise reference the asset. Then there is Toggle Debug Camera that puts you into free flight without taking you out of the game and displaying useful information, including details about what you're looking at. Players Only freezes everything in the game except for players and possibly physics objects. Then there's Cheat Script that lets you combine multiple commands into one by writing a script in your default game ini file. For example, you can see here I have a my cheat script that first does a teleport, then a summon, and finally a change size. You can write that in two different ways as shown here. And there's a bunch of other commands, more self-explanatory. You can see the full list in the CheatManager.h file or by seeing what functions are available on the CheatManager object in your PlayerController blueprint. But to get the most out of the Cheat Manager, you really gotta extend it with your own functionality. For my game, War Tribes, I have extended it with a couple of things. First of all, I have this cheat panel that will only spawn if the Cheat Manager is enabled. The cheat panel lets me easily spawn enemies, items, and has some other useful functionality. I also extended the Cheat Manager in C++, allowing me to enable some debug drawings, configuring attacks, parries, animations, and adjusting a whole bunch of more rules I've set up for my game. To extend the Cheat Manager, you can do some limited things in Blueprints, you can get a full functionality in C++, or you can do a mixture of both. In Blueprint, you simply create a class, make sure it inherits from the right Cheat Manager, and then you have an object you know will only be instantiated when the Cheat Manager is enabled. But you cannot define console commands by default in Blueprints, though there are some plugins I've seen that might be helpful in that regard. You can then hook it into UI or other classes. But to get to most of it, you want to extend it from C++ and add some console commands. To add a function or variable in the console, there are three different ways. The first way is to add a U function with the exec specifier. Optionally, you can also add the cheat meta tag here to add an alias for your console command. Then you can register a console command with the console manager, or you can use CVARs, which stands for console variables, which can have a changed handler to handle when these values change. This is what I've used for the rule changing in War Tribes. I've set up a bunch of macros to make it easier since I have so many, and you can see here what one of those macros expands to. CVARs also needs to be defined in a C++ file to function. CVARs and register console command can and should use the ECVF cheat flag, so you can't trigger it when the Cheat Manager is disabled. After you extended the Cheat Manager, go into your PlayerController and select the correct Cheat Manager to use. I'm sure you can think of many things to use the Cheat Manager for. I recommend starting by making some functions for the core logic of your game, for example spawning enemies, weapons, etc. And then there are some other useful functions like force garbage collection that can help you trigger certain bugs that might be hard to find. If you want to make it easier to find and type out your inputs for your cheat commands, you can register additional autocomplete words to be added. You do this by calling the register console autocomplete entries on the UConsole object, then adding a static or UObject method that returns a list of additional autocomplete entries that the Cheat Manager should know about. Now, as you may know, the Cheat Manager is not always available. It's only available in the editor or playing outside the editor if you're in single player. There's two reasons the Cheat Manager might be unavailable. The first is that it's simply disabled right now, or the second is that it's completely compiled out of the code, for example in shipping builds. If it's disabled because you're in multiplayer, you can simply run the enable cheats command to enable it, although only if you have authority. If you're in a shipping build, it's hard removed from the code and you cannot access it no matter what. Though there are some ways to get it back into shipping builds if you really want to, that I'll get into later. We can have the Cheat Manager in a develop or debug game package build, just not in shipping. We can see here that I'm in a develop build and the Cheat Manager is working fine. If you experience that the Cheat Manager doesn't work in your developed or debug game, it's probably because you're in a multiplayer mode, in which case you can try the enable cheat commands, or you can override the two core objects involved with enabling the Cheat Manager. That's the PlayerController and GameMode. Now the PlayerController is the class responsible for spawning and holding a reference to the Cheat Manager. It has two functions involved with enabling cheats. The first one is the add cheats, which is the one that spawns the cheat manager, and then there's enable cheats, that's the before mentioned command. Add cheats will ask the game mode for whether cheating is allowed, and we can override the PlayerController add cheats and or the game mode's allow cheat functions. If you really want the cheat manager to be enabled in shipping builds, here's how you can do it. First, we need to enable the console. You do that by going into your MyGame.Target.cs and adding a global definition for allow console equals 1. You can also use the allow console in shipping definitions, but that produced a bunch of warnings when I tried it. Then we need to add a global definitions for UE with cheat manager. This is the one that makes sure that the cheat manager actually exists in the code when we are building for shipping. And while we add it, you may also want to enable logging for shipping. You do that with bUseLoggingInShipping equals true, and then you need to either override build environment if you're in a normal Unreal installation, or build environment equals target build environment.unique if you're building Unreal Engine from source. If you find that a cheat manager is still not working, then you can try, like with the DebugGame and develop builds, call the enable cheats command or override your PlayerController or GameMode. Finally, I want to touch on the class CheatManager extension you might come across in the code or online. This is not a core part of the Cheat Manager. It's part of the Gameplay Features plugin that lets you add content and functionality at runtime, including cheat commands. I'm not covering the Cheat Manager extension in this video, but I'll leave a link below if you're interested in learning more about that. It is my goal to always bring you straight to the point and useful tutorials. If you like what you see, hit like and subscribe. And if you want to see more of me develop my top-down PvP tribal management game, head over to the main channel. Thank you for watching.